ANC is remembering struggle icon Charlotte Maxeke and its President Cyril Ramaphosa describing her as an outstanding leader. It's the 150th anniversary of the activist's birthday. It's as the ANC Women's League President Bathabile Dlamini once accused the party of not wanting women to lead. It's despite women having overwhelmingly voted for the ANC during the 2019 polls. Well, to speak to us about whether the party recognizes and promotes women leaders, we're joined by the youngest ever member of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature, Fasia Hassan, and political analyst Charlotte Maxeke. Good evening to both of you, and thank you so much for your time. Of course, our history when it comes to the preservation and the memorialization of women's legacies is quite disappointing. It's something that hasn't been done well across the board, and I suppose even more so when we look at the political landscape. And the skeptic in me looks at today and celebrates the fact that we can have so much attention and so much of the spotlight shone on Charlotte Maxeke and her life. But again, I think about the fact that we've got a local government election coming up this year, and I question whether or not this is part of politicking, effectively leading us towards the election. So I question the sincerity of it all. Fasia, let me give you an opportunity to weigh in on this issue here.
Look, I think this year the ANC rather, declared it the year of Charlotte Maxeke as well. So in addition to the fact that we all know it is a local government election year, but I don't think that that should take away from the fact that there's serious need for work of empowerment of women and for actual tangible groundwork that needs to be done. If it means that now that we've declared it the year of Charlotte Maxeke, we're able to do a lot more of it, perhaps that is something to discuss. But I think we also, no one's naive enough to think that it's not only about the fact that it's an election year. But I did think it's important to mention that even despite that, it is the year of Charlotte Maxeke, and throughout the year of 2021, we're going to have a number of different events commemorating her. And also just importantly to mention the fact that she's been fundamental in the creation also of the ANC, and one that's pushed a lot more for gender equity. So, I think it's a bit of both. But I do think that we need to acknowledge that it's more than just 2021 being a local government election year.
Asanda?
I think, of course, as it's part of your job as an ANC representative to say that it's not just about elections, but I think it is about elections. Yes, it's 150th birthday, and yes, it's also you've declared it the year of Charlotte Maxeke, but she has been around for 150 years, and she hasn't been acknowledged in those 150 years. And suddenly, in the year of local elections, it's the year that she suddenly is deemed important enough. I'm not naive enough personally to think that that's the only reason. I think it's great, and I think we should celebrate when women like Charlotte Maxeke are finally recognized, but I think we also should note that it's happening in part because it's an election year. And I think for me what's really sad is that we are celebrating Charlotte Maxeke, who upheld some of the most amazing and beautiful values that a lot of people who used to support the ANC used to, ascribe to the ANC, and we are so far from those values now. And the women who are leading the Women's League, particularly in the ANC, are so far from those values. And I'm hoping that, if anything, the ANC is going to be inspired by its reminder of its roots to go back to its values and to bring us real leadership that really does have feminist principles at heart, that really does embrace gender equality, and really is about more than just politicking for the personal.
Preserving memory in any society can take place in multiple ways, and unfortunately across the board, even when we look at something as simple as monuments, the majority of monuments that are built the world over unfortunately mostly just recognize men and their achievements. A very small percentage of those actually goes towards women, and the landscape in South Africa isn't any different. How do we begin to make sure that the histories of women who have contributed significantly to this country, even outside of the realm of politics, are given the recognition that they deserve? Fasia?
Yeah, let me be the first to acknowledge that I think we haven't done enough, most certainly, and to also agree with Asanda that the fact is there has not been enough done to acknowledge the role that women have played, not just in the liberation struggle, but even today. And I also agree with you, Kathy, that there's a ton more that needs to be done. And I think it also has to be deliberate. One of the things that I think has become a consequence of not having a deliberate action is that women have been left by the wayside for patriarchy, for misogyny, for a number of different reasons. But I do think that there needs to be a deliberate decision and a deliberate effort to do that. I'm hoping that because of this particular year being declared, this 150-year sort of anniversary, that it is an opportunity to do it. Right now, in fact, there's a proposal to rename William Nicol to Winnie Madikizela Mandela sort of avenue or street, which will be quite an important one. But of course, we need to go beyond that as well, right? It's not just about renaming spaces and having statues. It's about what does it mean for a woman in a township who has consistently gone through gender-based violence, poverty, economic hardship. Those are the conversations we need to be having. And women, or particularly vulnerable women, need to be at the center of those policy decisions as well. So for me, it's multi-pronged. It's definitely a need for us to have more representation for sure, but it's about meaningful representation. I think that's also something we need to reflect quite deeply on.
Asanda?
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely agree. There has to be a very concerted effort. There has to be an intentional effort in order for it to be legitimate, in order for it to be, to have the kind of impact that it has, because we know in South Africa that the majority of the population is women. We know that the majority of voters, therefore, are women, but we have political parties that continue to target men, that continue to promote men, and that continue to place men at the highest level of governance. And what would have been really great in this year, in this 150th year of Charlotte Maxeke, in this year that has been declared as such by the ANC, is if the ANC actually showed us actual female leadership beyond punting youngest female politician, because it's not good enough to just pick a few female leaders and say these are the leaders and tell us that that should be enough. What we should be fighting for is an ANC, but also just in general, a political party system in South Africa that is majority female leadership, because this country is run by women. This country has a majority voting by women, and therefore that should be reflected at the highest echelons of power. And for as long as we don't have that, we're going to see patriarchal and irrelevant, quite frankly, policies being passed that don't do what is needed for the average woman, whether she lives in Constantia or Khayelitsha, to be frank. Because the problem with having men making policies and having men lead South Africa is that the solutions that are brought are not gendered. There isn't any thinking about the gender impact of some of the policies that we are are being delivered. And there's just this general sense that, if it's good for men, then it's good for everybody. And that's the kind of thinking that we really need to stop thinking about. And even further than that, when the ANC or the government in general does actually do gendered policy making, there still isn't enough in terms of implementation. And that's something that needs to be looked at. And I'm hoping that, this highlighting of such an amazing woman who was part of the creation of the first political fight by women for women really is going to inspire political parties like the ANC to change and to do better.
Fasia, Asanda is raising the issue of representation, and interestingly enough, when one looks at the stats, say the latest report that they've done, the non-financial census of municipalities, they've actually found that the representation within municipalities across the board is heavily skewed towards women. It doesn't matter whether you're looking at just your councillors, your mayors, and different political representatives. Are there particular challenges that make it especially difficult for women within the political landscape at that level?
Definitely. Even if we have enough women representatives, as the numbers might tell us, it doesn't change the structural barriers to entry. And I'm quite sure that if you look at where those women are in those positions, they aren't necessarily the mayor, they aren't necessarily the CFO or the COO or the director. In some cases, they may be. But of course, I mean, it's a bit disingenuous to just put women there and think, okay, wow, we've liberated women. And as a woman who is in politics, I can tell you firsthand, it's incredibly difficult, regardless of the political party that you're in. The number of barriers we have to go through, the number of hoops that we have to go through are immense. And that's something that we really have to change. And it's something where, and I've said this on this platform before, that as a young woman leader, I also have to reflect on what I'm doing to make space more accessible to women, to pave the way for more women, but more importantly, to have each other's backs. One of the core elements of patriarchy is women fighting women, or allowing ourselves to be set up against each other. And that's something that we're really fighting hard against. I'm very involved in the Young Women's Desk, which is sort of a new element within the ANC, particularly in the youth space, around doing more grassroots, ground sort of activism around young women. And it's not just about pad drives. It's about empowering young people, giving young women confidence, making sure they're entering into spaces. There's a huge drive now with the 2021 local government elections to get more young women onto the ballot paper, and not just onto the ballot paper, but how do we ensure we support them? Having been in office now for about a year and a half, almost 2 years, I can tell you it's another whole battle to be here and to fight back and to ensure that we play that meaningful role. So it is a bit of both. But I do think that it does require concerted effort, and it is something that we can't be putting our hands or our heads in the sand about and just looking at the numbers and thinking, oh wow, we've transformed the situation, when in reality we haven't. Because even in Parliament, we have women representatives who are more than male representatives, and yet we still have major crises in which women are not properly represented. So it's not just about the numbers.
All right. Political analyst Asanda Mwasheng and Fasia Hassan from the Gauteng Legislature. We'll leave it there with both of you for tonight.